Welcome to the WanderLearn podcast. I'm your host, Francis Tapon. Happy Thanksgiving. For those who don't live in the United States and don't celebrate it, well, actually, in 2020, I guess the United States is not even celebrating normally the Thanksgiving festival. But you know what? Thanksgiving should be a day, like every day should be Thanksgiving. And, in a year like 2020 when people are so grumpy and, there's fires going on in the western United States, and then there's the election that is all stressed out and people getting all uppity up with the election. Again, in the United States, the worldwide pandemic that's been going on, the shutdowns, and on and on. I mean, there's so much negativity in 2020 in so many ways. And yet I am always thankful and grateful. Maybe not always, but I try to be. And so this podcast dedicated for Thanksgiving is to help remind you of some of the simple things that we should be thankful for. I'm just going to list off things off the top of my head without any kind of planning, but air conditioning or heating. I mean, I just think about that because you're out in the wilderness. You don't have, climate control, and you just have, but then again, you can be grateful for synthetic fibers and how easy it is and how cheap it is to buy wool or to get a used jacket for like $10 or less versus having to wear some raggedy old thing. Here we have climate control. Almost everywhere we live. It's fantastic. What about the fact that airplanes almost never fall out of the sky? I'm very grateful for that. When I get a little cut on my hand, it reminds me of wow, I should have been grateful for my little pinky when it didn't have a cut, or when that cut healed very quickly, because now all of a sudden I appreciate how that little teeny pinky actually makes a difference in my life. And I should be grateful for when everything is working well in my hand, or of course any other body parts. How about being grateful for Amazon? How about the competition that it's all brought with, Walmart, Amazon? Everybody's had to compete, and then you've got Hulu and you've got Netflix and you've got all sorts of other people trying to come out with new ways to entertain us for super duper cheap. It's crazy how inexpensive all these things are. The fact that back when I was a little kid, you had to pay for shipping for everything. Now all of a sudden shipping is free all the time. And, little things like that. And by the way, that the post office mostly works. And again, this is a first world problem thing, that other countries that are poorer countries, they don't tend to have such great working post offices. But if you happen to live in a high-income country and you have a great working post office, be grateful for it. And yes, of course, they make mistakes. But if you consider how many billions of things that they send around, overall, I think it's be grateful. It's think about all of our ancestors who would be so happy and thrilled to have the quote-unquote problems that we have, like all of a sudden, oh my God, today my post office came late or something like that. Or, oh my God, there's nothing to watch in my 7,000 channels I have to watch. What about the fact that we can entertain ourselves with virtual games? Well, I don't actually play them myself, but I imagine some people must really enjoy it. I think binoculars are something to be grateful about. And the fact that back 700 years ago, nobody had binoculars. And then suddenly, once we have them, and now they're so cheap and you can enjoy them. In fact, you have a binocular in a sense on your phone, because most phones you can pinch to zoom. And so all of a sudden you have kind of like a binocular or a little mini telescope by just zooming into an image at the touch of your hand. And of course, let's talk about how grateful we should be for smartphones and things like that. What about Bluetooth? I think Bluetooth, it's like magic for those people who just, you can send information wirelessly. I have this Bluetooth headset, and just think about it. I don't have any wires that kind of bumble into my thing. I can listen to podcasts and maybe you're listening to this through a Bluetooth headset right now. But be grateful, be thankful for that as well. Today's WanderLearn podcast is brought to you in part by Sawyer. The other part is my patrons at patreon.com. Do you spend a lot of time outside? And do you realize how much mosquitoes and ticks can ruin your camping, backpacking, gardening, or anything else you do outside? It can really ruin your life. What is the point of going outside if you got to hide in your tent all day long? Now, finally, there is a natural insect repellent that is safe for the whole family, including infants and those who are pregnant. And get this, it works better than DEET. That's right, it's safe on your skin, and it's better than DEET. Sawyer's 20% picaridin insect repellent comes as a spray or a lotion and lasts for 12 hours. It will not damage your plastics or synthetic coatings. So protect yourself and your whole family from those vector-borne diseases like the West Nile virus, Zika, dengue fever, and even malaria. Don't let those irritating bugs ruin your day or your trip. That's Sawyer's 20% picaridin insect repellent. That's Picaridin. Picaridin. Travel safely. Sawyer. They keep you outdoors. What about books? Books used to be handwritten and hyper expensive. Thomas Jefferson was super famous for having a big library collection, and he had to eventually donate it. I think it went to the Library of Congress, but that was a big deal to have a library. Nowadays, you can get books for free all over the place. Just download them for free. It's fantastic. And if you want to actually have a physical book, you can go to a used bookstore and get a bunch of books for $1 each. Or go to a library sale where they're also selling books for super cheap. Again, information is so cheap. So incredibly cheap. Just think about this podcast. I mean, it's not maybe the most incredible information you're ever going to hear all day long, but it's free. You can just download it. It's free. I mean, okay, I guess you got to pay for some internet. Well, maybe you don't. Maybe you just go to the library. And speaking of which, libraries are another thing to be thankful for. You can go there and get free internet. You can go to, Wi-Fi is everywhere. You can go to hotels and get it, cafes, restaurants, all sorts of places that have free internet. Sometimes cities themselves offer free Wi-Fi. And soon, I think in this decade, we're going to be able to have Wi-Fi, from satellites, basically internet. Facebook is sending out a bunch of satellites up in the sky, and it's going to try to make that super affordable. I'm also grateful for camping and being able to camp in safety. You don't have to worry about being eaten alive in almost anywhere you go. It's so civilized and easy nowadays to camp versus before it was like this big scary thing to do. Now you have all this equipment. It's so easy and affordable. How about contact lenses? If you told somebody from 200 years ago that you're wearing corrective lenses that are somehow not paper thin, even thinner, like plastic thin. Well, they don't even know what plastic is. It's just incredible, all the things. Now, I just started watching Mandalorian on the Disney Channel because I'm house sitting somewhere. And I'm just grateful again for the inexpensive entertainment that we can have. But I love e-readers. E-readers are just amazing. I love my Kindle. It's just the most fabulous thing ever. Such a lightweight thing, lighter than almost any book, and yet you can have 1,000 books, and yet it can be read easily in the sun or any kind of light, or you can have backlight if you need it, or I guess front light officially. It's amazing, the Kindle, and you can just touch a word, and then all of a sudden the definition will pop up like magic. It's just, what about eyeglasses or sunglasses and things like that? How about food and the fact that you can just get mangoes, even though nobody grows mangoes within 1,000 kilometers of you? The fact that you can get an exotic vegetable from far away as well. The fact that just food is so cheap. Back 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, people would spend about half their income just trying to get food, just trying to survive. And so now we don't have to do that. This is just things that are just popped into my head. You can just tell that I'm brimming with things to be grateful for, and you should be too. So whenever you get down and think about how life sucks or how things are hard for you, tell yourself today is Thanksgiving. Even if it's not Thanksgiving, and even if you don't live in America, damn it, every day should be Thanksgiving. I know this also because I know a lot of Africans who live in far poorer conditions on a material basis and yet are grateful for many of their blessings, because God knows that Africa is doing better now than it ever has in any other previous centuries. And that's another thing that we should all be grateful for. And the trajectory over the long term is good. So hope that optimistic message lifts you up. And thank you again for subscribing. And I'm thankful for you listening to my podcast and sharing it with people and writing reviews and all that kind of good stuff. This is Francis Tapon, encouraging you to wander and learn in 2021 when this whole COVID thing is over. Bye. And that concludes this episode of the WanderLearn podcast, where we explore travel, technology, and transformation. If you'd like to see the show notes with links to what we talked about, or if you'd like to comment on the show, or if you'd like to ask me a question, then go to wanderlearn.com and click on this episode. If you'd like to connect with me, just remember Tapon. That's my first initial and my last name. Tapon is the username I use on all social media. You can also get to my website by going to ftapon.com. And here's one last reason to remember Tapon. If you like what I do and would like to get rewarded for supporting my projects, then go to patreon.com/ftapon. That's where you can pick up some remarkable rewards for as little as $2 a month. And now for 5 quick favors. Number 1, subscribe to the WanderLearn podcast. 2, download it. 3, share it. 4, review it somewhere. And 5, sign up for my newsletter at wanderlearn.com. Our theme music was composed by Eric Stratman. This is Francis Tapon, encouraging you to wander and learn.